Welcome to Credit Chat Live. I am your co-host, Destiny White, and I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Christina Roman. And today, in honor of Women's History Month in March and Financial Literacy Month in April, we will be infusing both of these topics into one fantastic conversation to empower women entrepreneurs with financial literacy. And we are just thrilled to have Tiffany Grant, who is a financial wellness curator and founder of Money Talk with Tiff, as our special guest today. So, at Money Talk with Tiff, Tiffany has spent over 6 years educating people and organizations alike on achieving their financial goals. She also hosts the vibrant and insightful Money Talk with Tiff podcast. She is an experienced educator with 4 years under her belt at the Bryan School of Business and Economics at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, while also holding an MBA from there at the same time. So, with so many outstanding credentials and as a public speaker, a writer, podcast host, all in one, Tiffany really just brings that unique perspective on personal finance. And that's why she's just perfect for today's conversation. So, I would just love to jump right in with you guys. And thank you so much for being here, Tiffany. Um,
Yeah.
so as we're filming this, it's March, which is Women's History Month, and we would love for you, Tiffany, to just share a little bit about your story about Money Talk with Tiff. And it started as a side hustle, is that right?
Yeah, so once upon a time, no, I kid, but Money Talk with Tiff started in 2017 and it was a side hustle. Honestly, I didn't think I was going to make anything from it. I had a full-time job in HR and people were just coming to me with money questions. So I was like, if one person has this question, there's probably hundreds of other people. Let me just start a blog, put on the World Wide Web. Anybody can, access it. And so that's kind of how it started. And then from there, it snowballed. And in 2019 is when I started the podcast. And ever since then, it's been rocking and rolling. I've been a full time entrepreneur since 2019. And I never thought that, like, when I started, I was like, if one person reads this blog, I'll be happy. But now knowing that there's thousands of people that read the blog every month and then another thousands or so that listen to the podcast, it's become a whole movement and it was definitely not expected.
I love how organically it all started for you. Just a passion for educating people, because that's so important. When you start with that core value of, I just want to get education out there, it's amazing how everything just follows so naturally. I know that's something that has always been a part of our mission is getting financial education out there, getting credit education, aligning with creators like you to provide this much needed information to a variety of audiences. So we're always grateful that you take the time to be a part of these conversations. You're a part of Credit Chat regularly, and we just so appreciate your time. I would love to know, how did people start to ask you about personal finance?
Yeah, so I started just self-educating around personal finance and stuff by like reading Kiplinger Personal Finance and Money Magazine and reading other blogs and listening to other podcasts. And that's kind of how I learned everything that I know about money, today. And the reason I started on that trajectory was I saw, my immediate family go through bankruptcies and foreclosures. And, it was a ton of spenders in my family, which was great as a kid because I got everything that I wanted. It's very spoiled. I admit that freely today. But, I saw the detrimental effect of that spending. And so I didn't want to go through that. And especially after I got pregnant at 17. So I was a teen mom. I was like, I have to do something different. Like, I can't keep this going, like this whole family thing going. I have to do something different for my children. And so that's kind of how I started. And since I was self educating and reading and listening and all that stuff, watching Susie Orman used to be one of my favorite shows. Then people realized that I knew a lot of stuff that other people didn't know. And so they would just come to me and they're like, hey, Tiffany, what do you think about 401ks? Or hey, Tiffany, what do you think about this or that? Or how do I get out of debt or whatever? And then that's kind of just how it started. And it was just local people, friends, family at first. And then now it's people all over the world.
Wow. Tiffany,
I
you're
love how you took that initiative to change the future for your upcoming generations. as we're working with students, we have this campaign called Be a Legacy Leader. So it's Ball for Life. Be a legacy leader. And that's one of the things that we challenge them with when we present to them or we meet with them. How are you going to change future generations in your family, in your community? What's the difference that you're going to make? And I love that you didn't just say, well, these are the decisions I made and it is what it is. You were like, nope, it does not matter where I'm at in life. I'm going to make that change. And I applaud you for that.
Yeah, honestly, I've had so many naysayers in my life, from the time I got pregnant. And they're like, oh, why'd you get pregnant? Now you're not going to be able to do anything. And, this, that, and the other. And I feel like for me, that's always been motivation. It's like, I love when people count me out because I'm going to show you and then some. And
Yep.
so with that, like, I love being an inspiration for like other teen moms too, or people, single moms with kids, because the sky's the limit, honestly and truly. And depending on how bad you want it, like you'll figure out ways to get it done.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yep, I totally agree. And I was just gonna say, Tiffany, you're just like you are the definition of a self-starter, self-motivated person who just you're an inspiration, just all in all. And I love your entrepreneurial spirit that you just have organically. Not everyone pops out the womb just feel like being that way. And I applaud you. I applaud everything that you've done. And I just wanted to know if you could just tell us a little bit about some of your ventures and what have you learned from some of the ventures that you've taken on.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So I've had so many businesses throughout my life. I'm definitely a serial entrepreneur. And, I'm kind of a squirrel in that regard. I'm like, ooh, let me try this. Ooh, let me do this. So I will say, like, the very first business I ever had was when I was like 5 or 6 years old. And it was called Tiffany's Cafe because all my life I wanted to be a chef. Now, at that time, I
Oh my
couldn't
gosh.
cook because I was too little. But I would go and type, I would ask my grandma what she was making because I was living with my grandparents. And then I would go type up a menu, hand it out at dinner time. It would be like chicken for 20 cent, rice 10 cent, whatever. Like it was really small amounts, but it was big for me at the time. And that was like my first business. And I would serve everybody and I would collect their plates and then I would go around my piggy bank, collect my money. And even with that business, I learned a valuable lesson that even if you can't do something, there might be someone that can do it. And then you can have them as like your employee or,
Mm.
someone that can do the work for you. And you can still make money. And so that was like one of my early lessons because, my grandma had to do the cooking. She pretty much did all the work, but I was able to make the money because I structured everything. And so kind of having that base level of understanding when it comes to an entrepreneur or CEO, like this is how things operate. And then also, as I got older, it's like every hobby I've ever had, I've made money from it. I've tried to make money from it. So even like in seventh grade, I love reading books. And at that time, I was ordering on Amazon. This was when Amazon was like, kind of brand new. They only did books for the most part. And my mom was like, Tiffany, you're spending way too much on books. This is the last book I'm going to get. You're going through them like water. Money doesn't grow on trees. So I said, okay, cool. How can I keep feeding my, love of reading? And so I started buying and selling books on Amazon. So I would, with that one book, I turned around, sold it to someone else, and then used that money to buy my next book and so on and so forth. And so that was another little business that I had when I was like in seventh grade. So everything that I've enjoyed doing, I realized that there's a way that I can make money from this. And so that's kind of what I've done, throughout my life. And I have plenty more examples from making soap to doing what I do now with Money Talk with Tiff, being in the logistics business, being having just so many different tie dye. Like there's so many different things that I've had my hand in. But it all came from something that I enjoyed doing. And I'm like, how can I make money from doing this?
I love that because we all have those little hobbies that we enjoy doing. I love to make balloon displays for my son's birthdays, but I only do it for my son's birthdays because I'm terrified of doing it for other people. Just that fear of like, oh my gosh, their expectations versus my expectations, but I have pretty high expectations for myself. But it's always that trying to figure out, how do I get over that hump of that fear of wanting to put myself out there and see if I could explore making money for it. I would love for you to share, what are some tips that you have for women that are interested in starting their own side hustle or turning that hobby into a stream of income for themselves?
Yeah, so you don't know unless you try, right? So I have this philosophy that I live my life, and it's ready, fire, aim. So I get ready just enough to go ahead and fire, and then I can kind of maneuver and figure out, fine tune my aim. And so until you put that product or service out there, you don't know how people are going to perceive it. Until you put it out there, it's all in your head. Like you just said, you're like, well, I don't know how people are going to think. And once you put it out there, they're like, oh my gosh, it's the best thing I've ever seen. But you don't know until you get it out there. So that's one thing that I've definitely lived my life by is I'll try so many different things. And I believe in failing early and failing often, making sure that you learn from what did go right, what didn't go right, and then implementing that in future iterations. So that's the important part. And I tell people, just start, just try it out. And don't be afraid also. So this is another part. Let's go back to the soap making, right? So I started soap making because I love homemade soap. And I was like, oh, I can do this. Now I created it and made it into a business. But then people started having expectations about, oh, when are you releasing the next soap? Oh, you're already sold out. And, all these different things. So I said, what? I don't want this to be a business. I want to remain this. I'm going to go back. I want this to remain a hobby because for me, it started taking the joy out of making soap. So that's one thing too that I also want to put out there for the audience is if you try something and it's like, you know what, I don't really think this should be a business, or I don't think that this is a feasible business idea or whatever, then it's okay to step away from it too. A lot of times where people go wrong is they'll stay in the wrong business for too long. And then it's detrimental to not only their physical, mental, financial health, but it's just not a good look for them. So I also wanted to put that out there too, that try it, see how you like it, see how you feel about it, see if it makes money, evaluate all these different things. And if it doesn't make sense, don't feel like you have to be connected to that thing. Try something different.
I love that. And I love that. What fail early, fail often. I think that is such a great motto to live by. I live by that in my own career, like my corporate career of, okay, if I'm not feeling this, I'm going to move on. I'm not going to stay in a job that makes me unhappy. But yeah, figuring out how to apply that to the entrepreneurial side has always been a little bit tougher for me to wrap my brain around. So I love that you shared that advice. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I'll be honest, when you start a venture, in entrepreneurship, it becomes your baby, right? So you feel like, oh my gosh, I started this, I already told everybody about this. I got to keep this thing going, that type of thing. But the reality of the situation, if you make it a business, it's no longer your baby, right? Because now you have to think like a business owner. And that's another thing that I've learned throughout this journey. My very first website, I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was great. And I went to a business mentor and they hit it with a baseball bat. They're like, this is horrible. That's horrible. All of those different things. And had I treated it like my baby, like, well, they don't know what they're talking about. My baby's perfect. How parents do. We do.
Uh-huh.
Then I wouldn't have been able to take in that information and apply it going forward. And so I don't look at my businesses as my baby. Like if somebody came to me with enough money right now for Money Talk with Tiff, deuces, like I'll start something else,
Yeah.
because it's not my baby, it's business. Business is business. So that's another thing that I really try to let my entrepreneurs know, people that I consult with and stuff. I'm like, yeah, it's cool. It's your baby for a little bit, but once it becomes a business, treat it like a business. The CEO of Experian, like they don't treat this company like their baby. They're just like, this is what we need to do. This is what it looks like. This is how we get to the next level. that's it.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's all about making those smart business decisions if you're going to be an entrepreneur. I really like that concept of it's not your baby. What will be the best gain for yourself, for your future, what makes the most sense. And going into the topic of failing fast and not being afraid to do that, I'm sure there are women listening who have ideas and passions that they would love to come to life and they would love to start a side hustle, start a company, a business. That's their dream, but they're afraid to get started. I want to know, in your professional opinion, what are some common mistakes that new entrepreneurs can make financially, especially just as women?
Yeah, so many. So first of all, let me also say people aren't just afraid of failure. Sometimes they're afraid of success. And I've learned that as well in my journey. Sometimes to give you an example, I'll get a huge feature, and front page of Google, front page of Yahoo, whatever, and my inbox is blowing up. I hide. I used to hide because I'm like, oh my gosh, like I was already overwhelmed. Now all of this, new publicity and stuff is coming in. I'm not ready for this, that type of thing. And so I learned that you can also be afraid of success. And honestly, that's what holds a lot of people back. It's not really so much failure. It's like, what if this is really good? And I'm already overwhelmed. I already don't have enough time. So what is that going to look like later on? But I will say, going back to one of my other points, one of the biggest mistakes is holding on to something for too long. So once you, let's say, for instance, you're side hustling, keep track of how much income is coming in, how much expenses is going out, all of those different things. So that way you can make good decisions if it comes to a situation where you don't need to hold on to this any longer. And a good example of that for me was with the logistics business. In 2021, we did $500,000 in revenue, but revenue is not profit. And so when I looked at the books and I looked at the numbers, I said, wait a minute, like I could make more profit doing Money Talk with Tiff and be less stressed than running this business. And so when you are keeping track of those things and being honest with yourself as well, it makes you can make better decisions. And my life has been better ever since. Like, have I seen $500,000 in revenue with Money Talk with Tiff? Absolutely not. But I can almost guarantee I've seen more profit with Money Talk with Tiff. So just think about that. And then also another thing is not understanding what you're getting into either. So if you decide to make it into a full-blown business, make sure you educate yourself on legal structure, tax structure, all those different things. Because I've seen people get caught up in situations where, their family member was like, oh, I'll apply for your EIN for you. And they did it completely wrong. And the person has no idea what they did or what they're talking about. And so it can kind of set you up and you're the only one that's going to be responsible for that. So you want to make sure that you educate yourself on, if you do want to make it a full-blown business, what that looks like and what the different structures look like. Because if you listen to social media, everybody needs an LLC. I can tell you right now, Money Talk with Tiff is not an LLC because it doesn't need to be. It's a sole proprietorship. So just educate yourself on all the different forms of business, all the different tax structures you can take on, and make sure that you make a good decision for yourself. I'm trying to think of some other mistakes. I can pause for a minute if you have questions.
Yeah. Well, you referenced that you have a business mentor, or that you've sought the advice of business mentors. And I think as people are exploring, maybe taking their side hustle into the business world, you mentioned doing your research. So do you have resources that you can share where people could learn about these types of things, or do you just suggest that they work with a mentor?
So both. So both. And not just a business mentor, even if you're in a career, have someone that's a mentor even now, that can help you navigate through. When I was in career, I had a career mentor and she was super helpful. I was able to make leaps and bounds above what I would have been able to do by myself. So I teach my students that we should all have a personal board of directors, and you should have people playing different roles. So there should be someone that's like not like a naysayer, but like someone that brings you back to earth. Like if your ideas get too far out there, there should be someone that roots you on. There should be someone that is maybe the researcher or what have you. So make sure you have different roles in your personal board of directors, but or personal board of advisors, however you want to say it. But it's very beneficial to have that. But it's also beneficial to educate yourself as well, because just like you don't know everything, your mentor, your advisors, or whoever might not know everything. And it may take that one piece of literacy for you to piece everything together. So I say it's always a combination of both. And make sure that when you're forming your board, it's trusted individuals. You know what you can go to them for and for what. Like I have someone on my board that's a networker. So I'm like, anytime I need a connection, I'm like, oh, I know who to go to. I know they will have it. So, just make sure you vary up who you put on there, not just someone that's information based, but also that can make connections, that can also bring you to earth. All those different things is super important.
Yes, I love
I
that.
love it.
Thank you. That's such a cool idea, having your own personal counsel to guide you in your career. Because you naturally, I think we women connect with each other naturally. So maybe we go to our moms, our other professional women that we have in our lives that we can seek their advice for. I have a girlfriend who she's really good at being assertive in such a positive way that she always gets what she's looking for, right? And for me, I'm always scared to ask for certain things. And so I'll go to her for advice and say, okay, how did you make this happen? How did you make that leap? Because for me, I'm always worried about, that fear of rejection, I guess. And so she's a really good resource for that kind of encouragement.
Yeah, and I'll also say, I love women's empowerment. I'm all about it. But also make sure you have some varied voices on there. Like I know on mine, I have a couple of guys on there that give me like some real deal stuff, that I need to hear, or, information that they're specialized in, and is really helpful. So although the majority are women, there are a couple of men on there, and they do provide, a different perspective, because as we know, we've talked about, I think during credit chat last year for Women's History, but we have different experiences, and so sometimes their experience, I'm like, oh, I never thought about that. Like that is a good way to put it, or yeah, I hear what you're saying, but and then giving them my perspective. So, it's really helpful to have just varied voices. I'll put that out there as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. I totally agree with that. Personally, it's easier for me to make huge decisions in my life when I'm able to lean on like a personal board of directors. I think everybody listening to this should take a moment, write a note in your phone. Who are my personal board of directors? Because it's a combination of the research aspect that you were telling us about, and putting those pieces together, people in your life that you trust, even seeking out mentors, people that you've never spoken to, but they could be in your circle, they could be someone you follow on LinkedIn. You never know who's available to you, and if they might be willing to give you that piece of advice that you've been looking for. I actually sought out one of my mentors when I was in college, and she was a panelist at a PR club that I was a part of. And I just loved the insight that she provided just that one day. I decided to reach out to her, and she became a staple in my life, and she helped me gain so many opportunities in my life. So you just never know. You have to take that leap of faith. Have you ever experienced anything like that, Tiffany, where you reached out to someone and they became an unexpected mentor?
Absolutely. All the time. Because I'm also an extrovert and I'm a talker. So I talk to people all the time. And, sometimes it's like, oh, well, I can do this for you. I can connect you to this person, whatever. And I never knew that that would have been a thing. Now, I will also say, too, and this is what I tell my students, if you reach out to someone about mentorship and let's say they say no, it's okay. That's just one person. There's probably other people that are willing to be your mentor, but you have to realize that mentorship is, work. So some people just don't have the capacity and don't take that as something's wrong with you or, anything like that. It's just that person doesn't have the capacity at the moment. So move on to someone else. So I do want to put that out there as well. Also, one thing my career coach slash mentor taught me was the concept of your circle of five. So look at the five people that you spend the most time with, who you talk to, whoever they are. And then write down, she had me write down their names, what they did for a living, how much they made. And then she asked me, how much do you want to make in a year? And at that time, I was like, ooh, 100,000, that would be great. That would be fantastic. I think I was making like $11 an hour at the time. And so she was like, okay, all these people that you wrote down, they're all making about as much as you. So, how do you plan on getting here if everyone you surround yourself is here? And so, I say that to say you could have different circles for different things. So, I started surrounding myself with people that made over six figures a year. And so, I started inching up, closer and closer to where they were because the conversations just sounded different. Same thing with entrepreneurship. I surround myself with entrepreneurs because our conversations just sound different. So figure out where you're trying to go and then start surrounding yourself with people that are already there, and make that another circle. So I still have my friends. Don't get me wrong. I still have my friends, people I grew up with, whatever. We still have fun. We still hang out, but I just have different circles that serve different purposes. So I wanted to put that out there as well.
I love that. Before I started working at Experian, I worked at a company called the Red Hat Society with a group of women. It was a women's network, and there was a group of young women there that just kind of banded together, and we would go to dinner. At one of the girls, she lived close by. We'd go to dinner at her house, and they started having these conversations about what are our future goals. How much do you want to make? What's your next step? And these are conversations I'd never really had in my friendship circle. It was, just talking about regular life, everyday life. And it was this group of girlfriends that made me really start to think about, okay, what is my future going to look like? What is my earning potential? How can I increase it? And it was one of those girls who went on to work at Experian, who then came back to me and said, hey, we have a role here I think you'd be a really good fit for. I can pass your resume along. She was part of that networking aspect of my life. And she helped me to get the job that I have today at Experian. And anytime one of us moved on to a role that would help us to achieve our future goals, we went out to dinner and we celebrated that person. So that was like a way for us to encourage each other to keep reaching for those next goals. And I know I wouldn't be where I am today without that core group of women that really pushed me.
Absolutely. That is exhibit A of what I'm talking about. And then another thing I want to put out there, since we're on the topic of mentorship, is sometimes a mentor doesn't even have to be a person that you have contact with. So, to give you an example, my career coach, she was like, who is someone in the industry that you're looking into, which was personal finance at the time, that you look up to? And so for me, it was Susie Orman. I used to call myself the Black Susie Orman because I wanted to have the TV show. I wanted to, do all these things. And so she's like, okay, look up her story, like understand her story from front to back. How did she get to where she is? What route did she go? Who did she work for? What did she do? All those different things. And that's kind of what I did, in this realm. I looked at Susie Orman and also at the time, Dave Ramsey. I have a different perception of him now. But, those two people, I was like, oh, I would love to have a podcast, a radio show, a TV show, all these different things. How did they get there? And so they were kind of like unofficial mentors, just by studying their story and understanding how they got to where they were.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that.
Christina, when you said that one of your mentors in your circle of five helped you get to where you're at today at Experian, I should have also added that mentor I mentioned at my PR organization. She actually helped me get to where I'm at today as well. So if anyone's listening and they're looking for inspiration, all of us could be prime examples for you. Channel an energy of a person that you look up to. This bold or confident person, how would they approach this situation? Because you just never know what opportunities you could get by just speaking up. It's really important for us to think about as women because there's so many opportunities that we can obtain just by giving it a shot.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And there's 2 points I want to make to that. First, One strategy that I share with my students is to have informational interviews with people. So, if there's someone in a position, let's say a woman in a high level position at a company that you would love to work for, reach out and say, hey, I would love to have an informational interview with you just to see, how you got to where you are or any key takeaways or things like that. Also, do that when you're evaluating a job offer too. See if there's people at the company already, you can ask questions. But yeah, so that's another strategy that I feel like we should do more of is just have informational interviews with people. It's really low hanging fruit. Usually people love to talk about themselves, but you can get so much information from those just small conversations. So the other point was I read this book called The Alter Ego Effect, and it was so good to me because sometimes I struggle with asking for what I want and, making my needs known and things like that. And so I read this book, and the concept is to have an alter ego. And if you look at all the celebrities and stuff, they all have them. Beyonce has her Sasha Fierce and, all these different things. But having that alter ego that you can kind of step into whenever you feel nervous or anxious or whatever, that is very helpful. So I've actually implemented that in my business. I have an alter ego when it comes to doing negotiations and, all that stuff, because that's one thing that I know if Tiffany did it, I would be really nervous and I probably wouldn't ask for what I wanted. But if my alter ego did it, then they'll get what they want. So that's another concept that I wanted to share with the audience too.
Wow, that's amazing. I love it. That's these are just such tangible tips that anyone could apply by having an alter ego in their pocket to refer to.
Absolutely. Whenever I feel nervous, I'm like, okay, let me be Peyton today.
I love that. And you have a name. I love that.
Oh, it has a whole a whole persona attached.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm like, let me be Peyton. And my thing is like Peyton can be a male, it could be a female. And so, it's different. I was very strategic when I made my alter ego.
Do you have to do like a vision board for it, or how did you go about developing this alter ego?
Yeah, so honestly, it came from a conference too. So at the same time I was reading this book, I went to a conference, FinCon Women in Money, shout out to them. But we had a mastermind session, and one of the creators there was like, "Oh, I have a whole alter ego that's a white male because they're able to get more, generally speaking." So I mean, they have a whole email address, they have a little stock photo, like all of these different things. But they said how it helps with their business because, if they just come as their self, unfortunately, they don't get as much as if a white male acts. And so I said, oh, that is a powerful concept. Like, unfortunately, we shouldn't have to do this, first of all. But because we do, we might as well play the game. And so that's kind of like part of how Peyton came along was I'm like, oh, like this could be a whole other person that can ask for the things that they need without, being shortchanged or side-eyed or whatever. So
If there's another topic we could jump into really quickly, I'm curious since you have a lot going on, Tiffany. Like you're a mom, you are a successful business owner, you have all these streams of income that you have to manage, right? I would love to know how you balance everything in a nutshell, because I wonder, I don't know if you have a personification or an alter ego for that one, or if that's just you, but I'm sure people would love to know.
yeah, so honestly, uh, what helps me? Okay, there's a couple of things that help me. First of all, technology. I'm a tech nerd. I use technology to the fullest. Usually people come to me, they're like, Tiffany, I need to do this? What can do this? And I can tell them because I've tried everything. So technology is super helpful. So from everything from my schedule to my meditation in the morning, everything is created with technology, right? So I use technology a lot. Second is I'm a firm believer in not putting my energy on things that don't need me. And so I farm out a lot of stuff too. So I don't know if you all are familiar, but there's something called the Eisenhower method, which it's 4 quadrants. And the first quadrant is things that are urgent and important. Then we have not urgent but important. urgent but not important, and then not urgent and not important. And so things that fall into not urgent and not important, they just don't get done. Things that fall into important but not urgent, that's what gets delegated. So everything that falls into that category gets delegated out. Because at the end of the day, I used to be the person where I'm a perfectionist. I'm gonna just be honest. And I'm like, oh, I'm the only one that can do this. And if anybody else does this, they're not gonna do it right. And so I have to do everything. But going back to our original conversation, when you start thinking like a CEO, and this could be just CEO of your life, you realize that you can't do everything and that some things just need to be farmed out. So I
Oh, yeah.
happily hire a cleaning lady and she comes every week because it's something that I just don't have the time for, but it needs to get done. And so that's something that I farm out. I farm, my kids go to daycare and school, all these different things. So that's helpful as well. Also, I'll say that having a good support system. So even though I'm a single mom, my family is really helpful. So, like, I just came back from Jamaica to give you an example, and I was gone for like 10 or
Ooh,
11 days. My mom
amazing.
stepped in and she's like, oh, I can help with the kids, whatever. And of course, I had to do a ton of logistics to make sure everything worked. But I say that to say I do have a lot of help on the back end too that allows me to do these things. I farm things out when I can, definitely delegate. Like, if you don't take anything else from what I'm saying, delegate. And I know as women, and I can speak for myself, we don't really delegate as much as we should. So getting out of that practice of not asking for what you need and getting out of that practice of trying to do it all and be the superwoman and, all that stuff, that's cool, but you'll burn yourself out. And so that's one thing that I've learned in the last couple of years is I delegate as much as possible. If I don't need to touch it, then I don't need to touch it. And that's how I'm able to grow my business and also keep a pretty healthy work life harmony. I don't use the term balance, but pretty good work life harmony is that, things that need to be farmed out, I farm it out.
That is so good. I know I definitely fall under that mindset of nobody's going to do it as good as me, so I have to do everything. But to your point, you get burned out so easily and then you get angry, and then that could hinder somebody from potentially wanting to try something new. As you mentioned earlier, fear of failure, but also that fear of success is real, and so it's overwhelming. So I love that you mentioned that. Farm it out, delegate, those are all aspects to live by if you're wanting to pursue this, and also just in your everyday life.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, I know that I do not like cleaning, and I know that I do not have the time to do it either. And I know that if it's up to me, I will take 3 hours to do one bathroom. I know this. And so I know I can use that 3 hours to do something else that maybe makes money, or I'm able to relax or spend time with my kids. While my cleaning lady, she comes for 2 hours once a week and she does the entire house in those 2 hours. So also realize that you may not be the best in everything and that there's someone that may be better than you. So why not get that person, to do it? And on the flip side of that, since we're also talking about entrepreneurship, whatever it is that you love to do, there's probably someone willing to pay you for it as well. And so that's one thing so there's two sides to that coin. What you like to do, somebody will probably pay you for it. What you don't like to do, someone would love to get paid for. So just keep that in mind as well. I know I don't like shopping. That's another thing I don't like. I love thrift stores, but I don't like going to them and going through all the clothes. I have a friend that has a business where she does all the shopping for you. She goes to the thrift stores, she picks out the clothes. She has a wonderful eye, love her style, and she sells the clothes. Perfect. Works for me, works for all her clients, and she's able to do what she loves to do.
That's great. You just gave me an idea for our listeners. This is like an exercise. I know I said earlier, write down your board of directors, maybe top 5. This one could be, what are you good at and what could you get paid for doing that thing that you're good at?
Mhm.
And also the concept of investing in yourself. I don't like cooking, but I have these fitness goals and I'm trying to lose weight or gain. What can I invest in? A meal prep service or a nutritionist who can point me in the right direction? It's just making your life easier by investing in yourself to get the outcome that will serve you the most. I love that.
Yes. And really quick to your first point about writing down what you're good at. Sometimes I come across people and they're like, "Well, I don't know what I'm good at. I don't know, I'm not good at anything or whatever." Then I say, well, write down what people come to you for because other people see
Aha.
that you're good at something. And so, like, for instance, with Money Talk with Tiff, people were coming to me for personal finance advice. And I never thought that I was good at personal finance. But since people started coming to me, I'm like, wait a minute, there's something there. So think about either what you're good at, what people come to you for, or recurring themes in your life too. That's another way you can tap into what you're good at because what you'll realize is there's some things that consistently come up, like from probably the time you were a child all the way until now. There's something that keeps coming up, and usually, you might ignore it or you don't really notice. But if you sit down and you think about it, for instance, my friend that has the cleaning business. She's like, she always used to love to clean when she was little. And so, that carried on now. And then she's like, oh, I didn't even think I could make a business from this. So use those three, I guess, perspectives to kind of make your list when you're looking at what side hustle or things you can start.
Love it.
Wonderful. Thank you. Now, I've discovered in this conversation that I could probably talk to you for hours because you have so much. You're just really fun to talk to. You're very easy to talk to, and you just have so many great points that you're making throughout this conversation. I'm like, light bulb, light bulb, light bulb. Oh, gotta check that book out. Gotta look into that, And I really appreciate the time that you've taken to be here with us today. I would love to know just one last question. If there's one piece of powerful advice that you give to women, it could be personal, it could be business. Can you please share that with us today?
Ooh, I think, because I know I've gone over a lot, but if you didn't take anything else from this conversation, just start. So, whatever it is that you're trying to do, whether it's a new career or a new business or a new hobby, side hustle, whatever, just start. Because at the end of the day, you don't know what's going to happen. And if you're already talking yourself out of it, then it's just your head. So just do it. Act like Nike and just do it. And then you can always tweak as you go. So if you're listening, if you don't take anything else from what I said, ready, fire, aim, just do it. And then you can tweak as you go.
Amazing. Beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much, Tiffany, for everything, all of your insights.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. It was my pleasure.